They handed my sister the condo I helped pay for, then told me I was too ambitious to live under their roof. No argument, no warning, just a smile, a dinner, and a decision already made. Hi, I'm Elena. I used to think loyalty meant silence, but that night I realized I wasn't just being excluded. I was being erased, so I did what they didn't expect. I didn't yell, I didn't beg, I built, and 2 years later, I signed the lease as their landlord. Before we dive into the story, let me learn a bit about you. If you're a charming lady, please leave the number 1 in the comments. And if you're a dashing gentleman, leave the number 2. This way, I can send you a special greeting. Now let's start the story together. Some families show love with hugs. Mine used calendar invites and silence. It was a Wednesday morning in early spring when the text arrived. Dinner Friday, 6 p.m., just us. No emojis, no context, just 5 words and a timestamp, 7:42 a.m., from my mother's number. I stared at the screen, coffee halfway to my lips, the bitter chill of the cold brew brushing my fingers like a question I didn't know how to answer. It had been months since I heard from her, maybe a full year since any of us sat down at the same table. And now, this? I was sitting by the window of my Denver apartment, a clean-lined 1-bedroom in Rhino with pale wood floors and too many power cords. My laptop hummed quietly on the table, open to a pitch deck I'd been tweaking for the 5th time that week. I had a call with potential investors next Tuesday, a big one. But that text pulled my attention away from graphs and forecasts, anchoring me to something far less predictable: family. Monica texted just as I was rereading the message for the 3rd time. "You okay? You look like you saw a ghost." I didn't answer her right away. Instead, I got up, walked over to the open shelves above my desk, and pulled down a small, tarnished music box I'd found last month in a bin of childhood keepsakes. It had been mine, silver-plated with my name Elena engraved in looping script across the lid. When I wound it up, it played a few hesitant bars of a lullaby I never remembered the words to. I had it repaired 2 weeks ago. It felt like the right thing to bring. By Friday afternoon, I was parked outside my parents' house in Lakewood, Colorado, holding a paper bag from Sweet Action on my passenger seat. Inside was my mom's favorite, lemon ricotta cheesecake. I'd added a bottle of Napa Valley Red, and the music box, now polished and working. Something soft, something symbolic. The house looked the same: red brick, black shutters, a front lawn cut to perfection. I walked into the scent of tulips and roasted vegetables. The table was already set, candles flickering in matching holders, the linen napkins folded like origami swans. Mom greeted me at the door with a kiss to the cheek and that breezy tone she always used when she was preparing to land a blow. "You look tired," she said, taking the cheesecake. "Working too hard again?" I handed her the wine. "Just focused." Dad appeared behind her, pouring glasses. "How's the startup hustle?" he asked without looking at me. Before I could answer, Sabrina swept into the room like a magazine cover. Polished curls, silk blouse, heels too tall for the hardwood. She looked like she belonged on that tulip-lined set. "Elena," she said, beaming. "So glad you could make it." We sat, talked about the weather, traffic, Sabrina's new campaign for a mayoral candidate in Boulder. I smiled where appropriate, nodded politely, answered when asked. It felt more like a panel interview than dinner. I waited for the reason, and then it came, not with drama, but with eerie calm. "We gave Sabrina the Cherry Creek condo," Dad said, setting down his fork like he'd just announced the soup course. I blinked. "The penthouse? You mean the one off Spear?" "It's perfect for her image," Mom chimed in, pouring more wine. "You should see the view." "It's right for my clients," Sabrina added. "Optics matter." I tried to keep my hands steady, pressing my palms against the underside of the table. Mom leaned in, tone syrupy. "You've always loved your independence, Elena. That little apartment in Rhino suits you, so... you." Dad chuckled. "You'd rather invest in yourself anyway, right?" And Sabrina, smiling like a pageant queen, said, "You'll still be invited to mixers. I'll make sure of it." That was when I knew. This wasn't about a gift. This was about position, about rank. They didn't invite me to celebrate. They invited me to witness. I excused myself before dessert, claiming an early call. No one protested. As I stepped into the hallway to grab my coat, Mom followed, her voice light as ever. "Don't forget to thank your sister. It was her idea to include you tonight." Include me, like a charity case, like I didn't belong unless someone made space. I walked to my car without another word, slid into the driver's seat, and placed the music box beside me. For a while, I just sat there staring at it. The silver shimmered faintly in the dashboard light. They didn't forget me. They removed me. And that realization, quiet as it was, rang louder than any scream I'd ever wanted to make. It didn't happen all at once. They trained me to fund their life while starving mine. The morning after the dinner, I was still in my clothes from the night before. I hadn't meant to sleep in them. I hadn't meant to sleep at all, really. But somewhere between watching headlights crawl past my window and staring at the music box on my desk, I must have dozed off. The sky over Denver was gray, the kind of gray that sinks into your bones. I made coffee the slow way, grinding beans, boiling water, waiting for the bloom. There was something therapeutic in the process, like I could filter bitterness into something warm, something mine. I sat at my kitchen counter, fingers curled around the mug, and opened my laptop. The tab was still there from last night. The login page to the old joint account I'd opened years ago to help with Dad's knee surgery. I'd meant to close it a dozen times. I never did. This time, I typed in the password. The balance was lower than I remembered. Not empty, but not whole either. I scrolled through the recent transactions. There were a few routine debits, grocery store runs, a pharmacy receipt, and then one jumped out, transfer family reserve, $72,000, March 14th, 2021, a full month before the Cherry Creek condo transfer. My stomach tightened. That account had always been framed as a safety net, for all of us, sure, but it was my name that made it legal. My savings seeded it. I clicked into older records, opening a spreadsheet I hadn't touched in years. Somewhere near the bottom was a flagged note. Sabrina, emergency credit card limit, $3,200, March 2019. I remembered that day. She'd called crying, claiming her wallet had been stolen the day before a charity gala. I had just paid rent late to cover Dad's root canal. My apartment at the time had black mold in the ceiling. I stayed anyway. "You're the responsible one," Dad had said on the phone. "We count on you." I counted the transactions, 17 of them, spanning 5 years, all under vague names: household expense, family pool, shared contribution. But the amounts weren't vague at all. They were precise, intentional. I opened Sabrina's Instagram on another tab. She had posted that very same day, March 14th. Her caption read, "A new chapter begins. Can't believe this is real. Grateful, Cherry Creek living." The condo's move-in date aligned with the $72,000 withdrawal. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, then searched for Radiance PR Holdings. It was her company. I hadn't realized they'd gone official. I found a business registry listing and another line in the account from 3 months ago. Transfer, Radiance PR Holdings, $25,000. Next to it, a digital signature. It looked like mine, almost. The loop in the E was too tight. The tail of the N curled upward, something I never did. I pulled up my past digital forms. Side by side, it was clear. It was a copy, not a match. The printer beside me kicked on. I hadn't meant to hit print, but maybe I had. The machine hummed as page after page rolled out. Transaction logs, side-by-side signatures, timestamps. I gathered them into a stack just as a knock hit the door. Monica stepped in, holding a paper bag. "I brought muffins," she said, "and probably emotional support." Her eyes dropped to the table, scanning the papers. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. She set down the bag. "They've been banking on your silence." I nodded slowly, and I gave it to them. "Yeah," she said gently, "but silence isn't loyalty, Elena. It's consent." I reached for my phone, opened my email, typed in Caroline Cordell's address. I'd met her at a startup legal panel last year. She had a reputation: calm, precise, unshakable. Subject line: need a review. Potential misuse of joint account. I attached the documents, wrote a short explanation, hit send. Monica poured coffee and handed me a mug. "What are you hoping she says?" I shrugged. "That I'm wrong." We didn't speak for a while, just the sound of spoons against ceramic, the faint hum of the fridge. At 10:23 a.m., Cordell replied, "Signature inconsistency confirmed. This may fall under fraudulent authorization depending on intent. Want to pursue this?" I reread the message twice, then clicked reply. One word: yes. Not just to Cordell, but to myself. To the part of me that had spent years justifying their behavior, explaining it away, telling myself that being the strong one meant letting things slide. That maybe love looked like sacrifice. But it didn't. Love didn't look like forgery. It didn't sound like you're the responsible one every time the bills hit the table. It didn't feel like watching someone else get the keys to your future while calling it family. My phone buzzed again. "Mom, why is the account locked? Is something wrong?" Another buzz. "Please call me." I turned the phone over, screen down, the weight of it suddenly too heavy. Across the table, Monica raised an eyebrow. "You gonna answer that?" I didn't move, just stared at the cooling mug between my hands. "No," I said. "Not yet." They didn't say, "You're out." They said, "It's for your own good." The air outside was crisp, just enough spring chill to bite through my blazer. I stood for a moment at the foot of the driveway, staring at the house I used to call home. The bird feeder Mom hung by the kitchen window was still there, swinging slightly. Same blue shutters, same flower beds, but it all felt off, like an old photo that had been touched up too many times. I wore black, not for mourning, but for clarity. Clean lines, no room for misunderstanding. In my hand was a small overnight bag, just big enough to hold the clothes and documents I'd left behind during late-night visits and holiday drop-ins. Nothing sentimental, or so I thought. Mom opened the door before I could knock. Her smile was soft, rehearsed. "Elena," she said, her voice rising in that polite, pitched way, reserved for brunch guests and bank tellers. "You look sharp." "I didn't come to chat," I said gently. "Just here to grab my things." "Of course." She stepped aside, ushering me in like a guest at an open house. Dad was in the living room, arms crossed over his chest like a man waiting for a weather report. He gave me a nod. "We're glad you came. This doesn't have to be difficult." The way he said it made my skin prickle. I moved through the hallway, familiar steps over familiar floorboards, but my body felt foreign in the space. Upstairs, the guest room, once mine, was exactly as I remembered. Beige comforter, empty walls, a lamp with a slightly tilted shade. My file box sat neatly on the desk. A few clothes still hung in the closet, pressed and untouched. Mom had even folded my favorite gray cardigan. Everything was in place. That's what unsettled me. I began packing in silence. Downstairs, their voices floated up. I heard Mom's measured tones, Dad's occasional cough. Nothing angry, nothing obvious, just calm, curated distance. When I came down with the bag, Mom was setting out tea in the kitchen. Chamomile, 2 cups, a soft invitation. I didn't sit. "I think," she said slowly, "it's time we all had a little space." I didn't respond. Dad added, "You've been under so much pressure. Sabrina's adjusting to the new place and, well, your work is demanding." "You think I'm too much," I said, not angry, just stating facts. "No," Mom interjected quickly, "not too much, just focused, intense, driven." I blinked. The same words she once said during a birthday toast came back. That's what makes you different. I looked at them both. You want me out? That's not fair, Dad replied. You've always valued independence. Not the same as being cut off. They didn't flinch, didn't backtrack, just watched me, composed. No mention of the money, no apology, not even a trace of discomfort. Only one subtle line from Mom as I reached for the doorknob. We hope you'll remember this wasn't about punishment, it's protection. For all of us. I paused, then turned. You can call it whatever helps you sleep. On my way out, I stopped by the mantel in the living room. A family photo from my college graduation sat in the center, all of us smiling in the spring sun. But something stopped me. Sabrina was in the picture, except she hadn't been there that day. I leaned in closer. It was a composite. Her face layered in, flawlessly blended, but I remembered. She had been in Napa at some fundraiser. She hadn't even called. I stepped back, the silence around me louder than any shout. That photo said it all. They hadn't just replaced me, they'd rewritten me. I slipped the old Father's Day card I'd found in the desk drawer into my bag, still sealed, my handwriting on the envelope. For Dad. Thank you. I didn't open it, didn't need to. Upstairs, I had paused at the dresser. The music box was still there, sitting exactly where I'd placed it months ago. Polished, closed. I left it. Not because I didn't want it, but because I wasn't ready to carry it again. Not like this. Outside, the sun had climbed higher, casting sharp lines across the sidewalk. I walked slowly to my car, placed the bag in the trunk, and slid into the driver's seat. My phone buzzed. Sabrina, heard you moved out. Hope you're not going to make this dramatic. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. Then I typed back, no. But I've learned how to respond to drama. I hit send, rolled down the window. The birds were still chirping, the world still turning as if nothing had changed, but everything had. They said I was tearing the family apart. I just brought a calculator. Monica's apartment smelled faintly of cinnamon and printer toner. The window was cracked open to let in the last gasp of summer air, but the late August heat still hung heavy across the living room. I sat cross-legged on her rug, a growing fortress of folders and manila envelopes around me. The kitchen table had become my command center, 2 chipped coffee mugs, an open laptop, old tax files stacked next to legal pads filled with scribbles and arrows. The music playing faintly from Monica's speakers did little to soften the growing pressure behind my eyes. For years, I had thought of these numbers, these withdrawals, transfers, blurred account names, as background noise. I chalked it up to responsibility, to being the reliable one. But now, with distance and silence on my side, the math no longer looked like family support. It looked like theft with a birthday card on top. I started with the joint account, the one I had set up after Dad's surgery in 2015. At the time, it had felt like the adult thing to do, a safety net, something that said, we're in this together. Scrolling back through the statements, a pattern started to emerge. Withdrawals every few months, small ones at first, $200 here, $500 there, then larger amounts, each marked under vague labels, medical, reserve, family needs. I noted them all, cross-checking them against social media timestamps and emails. That's when I saw it. A $72,000 wire transfer from my emergency fund, dated just weeks before Sabrina had posted a picture of herself on that condo balcony with the caption, "New Heights, New Beginnings." The transfer memo? Family Reserve. I stared at the screen for a long time, hands cold despite the summer heat. My breath caught in my chest. That money had been meant for disaster relief, job loss, hospitalization, earthquake maybe, not marble countertops and skyline views. The printer whirred beside me, spitting out page after page of evidence. Monica walked in from the hallway barefoot, holding a bowl of cereal and a look of concern. She leaned over the table. How bad? I slid one of the pages toward her. The $72,000 came from my name, my account. labeled Family Reserve. She scanned the document, chewing slowly. Then she looked at me. "They've been banking on your silence." "I know." She reached for another page. "And this one?" I passed her the metadata file, a copy of my pitch deck from 2 years ago, copied line for line and forwarded to Radiance PR Holdings. One of the versions still had my name embedded in the Properties tab. I remembered creating it on a red-eye flight to Boston, racing against time to meet a deadline, and now it was in Sabrina's portfolio. "She's not even careful," Monica muttered, "just bold." "She's used my work to sign clients," I said. I found 3 email chains where she reworded my proposals and changed the footers. Monica placed the serial down. "You have enough to go legal." I nodded. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I opened a new email window. To Caroline Cordell. Subject line, protective steps. I attached everything. Bank statements, signed documents, screenshots, metadata logs. I stared at the blinking cursor in the message box, wondering what words to use. I settled on, "Please review the attached." I believe there has been consistent financial misuse tied to my name, signature inconsistencies included. Ready to proceed. I clicked send. The moment felt strangely quiet. I got up, poured the rest of my cold brew into a glass, and took a long sip. It tasted bitter, darker than usual, and I realized it had been sitting out all day. I didn't care. That bitterness felt right. By late afternoon, Cordell called. "Got your email," she said, her voice crisp and neutral, like a surgeon preparing a patient. The notary used on the 2017 trust amendment retired in 2016. That alone gives us a crack in their story. I sat down. So, the amendment might be invalid? Potentially, especially if we trace back the original clause. It names you. I swallowed. And the signature on the condo withdrawal? Not yours. I've already flagged 3 discrepancies. Stroke angle, initial curve, slant. It's a poor imitation, enough for a forgery inquiry. I closed my eyes. Want a file? There was no dramatic pause, no swelling music or breathless hesitation, just the soft sound of paper shifting as I reached for the folder marked evidence. "Yes," I said, "file it." An hour later, my phone buzzed. "Dad, stop digging. This won't end well." That was it. No hi, no call me, just that. For years, I might have interpreted it as worry. Now I heard it clearly. Fear. Not for me, for them. I didn't respond. Instead, I stared at the screen, then deleted the message. It didn't deserve to be archived. Later that night, Cordell emailed back, "We can file for fraud, but I need to ask, are you prepared for this to get public?" I replied, "I'm not here for noise, just truth." I shut the laptop. Outside, the sky was starting to turn. Faint streaks of lavender peeled through the edges of twilight. Monica was curled up on the couch, pretending not to watch me, a book open but unread in her lap. "I filed," I said simply. She nodded once. "Good." The weight in my chest hadn't lifted, not yet, but it had shifted, like a bag you finally set down, knowing full well you'll carry it again. But not tonight. Tonight I had receipts, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel regret. The Rosemary Room looked like something out of a curated lifestyle blog, warm candlelight flickering against polished glassware, low jazz humming in the background, and too many kinds of salad forks for one meal. Nora's 40th birthday was supposed to be elegant, celebratory, uncomplicated. But the moment I walked in, something in me knew it wouldn't be. I wore black. Not mourning black, just sharp, clean, undeniable. A subtle reminder that I wasn't here to blend in. As I stepped inside, the scent of rosemary and citrus hit me first. Then came the sea of familiar faces, cousins, old family friends, and Sabrina in a champagne-colored wrap dress that caught the light every time she moved. She was already mid-laugh with a small circle when she spotted me. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Elena," she called across the room like we were lifelong allies. "You made it." I nodded politely and made my way to an empty seat, clutching my handbag a little tighter. Inside, carefully placed, was a thin black folder. I'd reviewed its contents so many times, I could recite the numbers in my sleep. Dinner progressed with curated ease. Nora beamed as guests toasted to her grace under pressure and timeless style. Courses came and went, roasted beets with goat cheese, seared sea bass, a deceptively airy soufflé for dessert. Every detail perfect, every conversation shallow. Then came the toast. Sabrina stood with practiced poise, glass raised just high enough to demand attention. "I just want to say," she began, "how lucky we are to have a family that values ambition, even when it tears us apart." A few guests chuckled, unsure. She continued, eyes glinting with something almost metallic. "Let's give a round of applause to my sister Elena. After all, not everyone can teach us how ambition can ruin dinner tables." More laughter this time. Nervous. Some glanced at me. Most looked away. I stood up slowly. Sabrina's smirk faltered. I didn't raise my voice, didn't clear my throat. I just walked to the front of the room and picked up the mic she had so generously relinquished. "You know what's funny?" I said, meeting no one's gaze in particular. "That condo you like to post about, the one with the view from the 31st floor, it was paid for with stolen money." Silence swept through the room like a cold wind. I turned and gently placed the black folder onto the gift table. "In here," I said, "is documentation of multiple unauthorized withdrawals from a shared account I opened years ago. There's also evidence of a forged signature, mine, on a transfer form for $25,000. That money went directly to Radiance PR Holdings. That's Sabrina's company, in case anyone's wondering." My mother's hand moved instinctively to her necklace. My father's jaw tightened. Sabrina's wine glass tilted ever so slightly in her grasp. I continued, voice even. "There's more. A trust amendment filed in 2017 using a notary who'd already retired, and a $72,000 withdrawal from my emergency fund, marked Family Reserve, conveniently dated right before the Cherry Creek condo closing." Dad stood up. "This is family, Elena, not a courtroom." I turned toward him, calm. "Then stop acting like you've got something to hide." My mother's voice cracked as she reached out slightly. "Honey, I'm not here for drama," I interrupted. "Just clarity." Sabrina blinked hard, her voice suddenly too small for the space. "Do you want me to lose everything?" I looked at her, not angry, just done. "I wanted you to stop taking what was never yours." A beat passed, then another. Whispers began spreading like spilled water across the room. A woman near the back leaned toward her friend. I'm glad someone finally said it. My father's eyes darted toward the exit. My mother sat frozen. Sabrina had gone pale. I replaced the mic on the stand and turned to walk away. No yelling, no theatrics, just proof. Outside, the air was cooler than I remembered. The hum of downtown traffic felt distant, like static on an old radio. Monica stepped beside me, slipping her phone into her purse. "They didn't see it coming," she said. I glanced at her. "You didn't burn the house," she added with a quiet smile. "You just turned the lights on." We stood there for a moment longer, watching as guests slowly trickled out of the venue. Some looked down, some offered brief, unsure nods, and a few, just a few, looked at me with something resembling respect. There were no string quartets, no velvet ropes, just folding chairs arranged in a half moon under the warm glow of recycled pendant lights. The community center in 5 Points wasn't built for grandeur, but somehow it felt just right. I stood at the front, hands calm at my sides. Behind me, a table held a small stack of envelopes, each one embossed, sealed, and ready to rewrite someone's story, just like mine had been. The music box sat open on the nearby desk, its soft chimes playing a tune no one else in the room recognized, but I did. Every note. I stepped forward. For every daughter told she's too loud, too intense, too much, I said, voice steady. May you always be enough for yourself. Applause followed, not thunderous but real. Monica sat in the second row, smiling like someone who had carried both boxes and burdens with me. The young women in the audience, wide-eyed, some misty-eyed, held their envelopes carefully, like they might shatter if clutched too tightly. It wasn't just money. It was a message. You're allowed to want more. You're allowed to stay. Later that night, I sat at my kitchen table, still in heels, scrolling through messages when Sabrina's name lit up. You won. Why are you still going? I stared at it for a long moment, then typed slowly. Because my dream was never just survival. Her read receipt appeared, then vanished. No reply. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Caroline Cordell. The trust is fully reinstated, she said. Condo title has returned to you. The fraud settlement is closed and sealed. Thank you, I said. Congratulations, she replied. You've handled this with more grace than most. I signed the final documents that night. No trembling hand, no hesitation, just the quiet click of resolve. As the sun dipped behind the skyline, I stood by the center's front windows. Across the street, I caught a glimpse of Sabrina, alone. No makeup crew, no curated outfit, just her, getting into a faded sedan that coughed once before starting. I didn't wave. She didn't look up, and that was fine. Back home, I opened the music box again. Nestled inside now was an old letter I had found last winter, folded between childhood photo albums. It was from Mom. Not quite an apology, more like an explanation written in tired cursive. I don't know how to love someone who doesn't need my approval to breathe, it had said. Tonight I read it once more. Then gently I placed it inside the music box and closed the lid. It wasn't an apology, but it was honest. And for the first time in a long while, that was enough. The music box doesn't play louder now. It just plays in a room where it's finally heard. And maybe that's all I ever wanted. Some wounds don't ask to be avenged. They just ask to be understood. Family isn't who praises you when you shrink. It's who stays when you grow. If we dare to stand up, not to shout, but to stay true, we just might become the foundation someone else needed to believe in themselves. If this story echoes something in your own life, I hope you'll share your thoughts. Sometimes, even a quiet story can help others find their voice.